Welcome to the Becoming babyREADY podcast, your podcast for queer family planning. My name is Sam, and throughout this podcast, you'll hear me have conversations with professionals who work alongside people who want to start and grow their families, as well as parents of intentionally created families. Everyone I speak to identifies as being part of the 2S LGBTQIA+ community. This is your opportunity to learn answers to questions you didn't even know you had. Today I'm speaking with Ashlee Livingstone of Our Forte, and together we're speaking about the need for boundaries, especially during the family creation process and continuing on through the parenting journey. Welcome, everyone. I am excited today to have the opportunity to be speaking with Ashlee. And Ashlee, I'm going to ask you to tell us all about your professional role.
Thank you, Sam. I'm so excited to be here. I am a leadership coach. I have the pleasure of helping people develop self-leadership. And it's something that I am extremely passionate about, especially as I've been going through the journey of motherhood and parenting and realizing how much I didn't know and seeing, myself struggle and learn to grow. I now get to help other people develop that self-leadership for themselves, figure out how to make time for all the things they want, figure out what their blocks are, and how to move through things so they can be the best humans they can be.
That's pretty great.
Sounds like a dream job, hey?
It does sound like a dream job. Yeah. Can you tell us how your work specifically can help members of the 2S LGBTQIA+ community start or grow their families?
Yeah, I think, I say this, very humbly, in that, we have desires in life and we all want to continue to grow our legacy. And the work that I do in helping families figure out what it is they want and the actions that they need to take in order to make it happen. We can't just consume everything without taking action. And that's a big part of the work that I do. And I think it starts, early on in relationships and all the way through. And as you grow your family, is really truly helping you understand who you are, what your boundaries are going to be, and talk a lot about that word boundaries today, and just how you want to show up in your family. And I think sometimes we just do things on autopilot, and, our community needs to even be more intentional, because the road is sometimes a bit more challenging and we need to be more intentional about it.
Fair enough. What are there things that you might look for as a member of the 2S LGBTQIA+ community when you're working with individuals, couples, families, that your heterosexual, cisgendered peers who work in a similar capacity may just not know to look for?
That's an interesting question. I think I'm really looking at how we're showing up and what our triggers are. I think that's a big piece. There's a lot of, as I've gone through my own personal growth journey and starting out, I was married to a man, and we went through our journey as a, cisgendered couple. And in that transition, when I met my wife and got married to her, so many new things popped into my head that I didn't know before. And now I am so aware. And it's that just being intentional, but also recognizing what the triggers are, why they're triggering us, and what we're going to do to flip those stories or learn and grow. So instead of kind of getting sucked into a bit of that drama triangle, I don't know if you're familiar with the dreaded drama triangle that exists, but we can play different roles in it. And I know that I have definitely lived in that land of, prosecutor or persecutor, instead of looking for ways out and how I was going to show up differently. That's the biggest piece for me, is figuring out, why is this triggering me and what am I going to do about it, instead of projecting onto my family or my work team or different things. It's really about self-discovery more so than anything else.
Fair. Fair. Are there any pearls of wisdom that you've learned over the years about yourself and the work that you do that your clients would argue makes you especially good at doing the work that you do, and that they're lucky to have the opportunity to work with you?
Yeah, for me, I'm a big believer in boundaries. And, I have this conversation a lot with my clients because they hear the word boundary and immediately think restriction.
Mm.
Um, it makes it sound like you can't do something. And I actually see boundaries, especially in parenthood, especially in new families, as a hugely free process to go through. It can help you really understand, what are you and your partner wanting in your family? What are going to be your no-go zones? What And for me, this was a huge learning, because I started off motherhood trying to make everyone else happy, um, thinking that that was that badge of honor that I had to wear as a new parent. Of, look at, I have this child and everyone wants to see him and I should be sharing him with the world. And how could I deny other people a chance to build a relationship with him? And I sacrificed myself so much through that process of not having any boundaries, of not having any expectations from any of the people around me to support me. But it was also because I didn't use my voice to ask for it. So a big piece of the work that I do with people is focusing in on those boundaries. Like, what is it going to be that creates that resentment inside of you, where you said yes, but you didn't want to? It didn't feel right. And maybe it's going to 52 families to visit them on Christmas or Thanksgiving or Mother's Day or Father's Day or whatever it is. We we overgive sometimes to please others, and the resentment grows. And then you show up in all of those situations not truly there. And so for me, that pearl of wisdom that I, will always stand on that soapbox about, is setting boundaries and setting them early. Talking to your partner about, what does Christmas look like? What do the holidays look like? What does Thanksgiving look like? What does birthdays look like? And having those conversations. What does coming home from the hospital look like? That was a big one for me. I came home from the hospital, pulled up to my house, and my driveway was packed full of cars. And I just started crying. I just started like crying my eyes out, because I was walking into my home for the very first time with my new baby, and there was a house full of people. And I didn't know how to say, please leave.
Yeah.
I didn't even know how to tell them not to be there in the first place.
Right. Right.
Yeah. So for me, having those conversations, as uncomfortable as they might be, they are so necessary for new families starting out. And at so many different points in your parenting journey, they are hugely important. And they can shift over time,
Sure.
but you have to keep having those conversations about, there's so many issues that are going to come up as you parent children and navigate life in general. So being comfortable with boundaries. And I always say the misconception with boundaries is that I set a boundary and Sam, it's up to you to respect my boundary. But that's not the case. It's
Mm-hmm.
my boundary to set, my boundary to communicate, and my boundary to hold. So it's not up to my child to hold my boundary. It's not up to my partner to hold my boundary. It's not up to my mother-in-law to hold my boundary or the school or whomever. It's my boundary.
Mm-hmm.
And I get frustrated when I let other people cross my boundary. It's a me thing. It's not another people thing.
Yeah. That's very, very true. And I think having those conversations probably with partners also helps, because one of the things that comes with resentment is that it's often who the birthing parent assumes a lot of responsibility and assumes that they need to be the primary caregiver for the baby. And for a lot of couples and family dynamics, that is a critical function of the family dynamic. It has to be that way. But sometimes that takes away some of the power from our partners too, and having them be engaged if they so choose to be deeply engaged in the parenting journey. And so both, we put up boundaries about the things that we need to do to respect ourselves, and our partners need to do that too, because they may want to be more involved than we're necessarily interested in letting them be. And that's just an instinctual thing that happens. Well, if I'm going to be the one at home and you're going to be the one outside of the house, which is often the dynamic in a couplehood, regardless of sex or gender or anything else. So the partner needs to be able to have their boundaries as well. And so those conversations, like you say, are critical for a consciously functioning family.
Yeah. And these are, this spreads across all types of families.
Sure.
Those feelings of guilt, of wanting to show up to all of the houses, and the people pleasing, and sometimes that all or nothing type attitude. These are common themes we see in parents, and it's also so much pressure that we don't need. And it's almost like giving yourself permission to let yourself off the hook for whatever image you have of perfection or bringing baby home or first Christmas or first whatever. Just cut yourself a little bit of slack and understand at the end of the day what is truly going to make it special, and how are you each going to show up. And again, like you said, allowing that partner also to voice their boundaries, their desires, and figure out how, as a couple, you're going to work through, right? And that's such a big piece that I didn't know when I started my journey. And as I have grown through the years, it is one of the pieces that I exercise often.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to remind people that even if you're watching this recording right now, you've already got 2 kids at home and they're young, it's never too late to start establishing those boundaries. If you haven't done it so far, that doesn't mean, okay, well, it's too late. It's not, right? And that's where you come in handy.
And it's also a really great lesson to teach your kids how to set boundaries, right? It's everything you do as a parent, no pressure, is teaching your kids.
Sure.
Right. So I remember somebody had told me that parenting is self-development on steroids. And I truly understand now that, yeah, everything that's why I always say, like, leading with intention, how you want to show up and taking action that is aligned with those beliefs. So, taking that aligned action and really living the life that you truly want. And that includes those boundaries. It has creating the capacity and the space to do the things you love, that having that time. And just really, again, taking a close look at your triggers and why are they showing up? What needs to change? What needs to change? And maybe it's a new boundary.
Sure. Absolutely.
If you're currently pregnant, then you should know that your umbilical cord and placenta are super rich with stem cells. These stem cells have been used to treat type 1 diabetes, different types of cancers, heart disease, multiple sclerosis, cerebral palsy, and more. With Anja Health, you can actually freeze these stem cells at birth, so your family always has access to that perfect match for your family to use for future disease treatment. To do this, just bring an Anja Health kit with you to birth, tell your provider to place the umbilical cord and placenta in the kit, and then call us for pickup. Get your kit today at anjahealth.com, and don't forget to use the code babyREADY for a surprise discount from babyREADY Live.
Have you had times in your life where you've been made to feel the other?
I think for me, it really started once my son started school. And yeah, definitely the school age brought up a lot. And that's why I talk about triggers a lot, because it was less about me feeling other and as opposed to him feeling other. And as a result, me then feeling that way.
Right.
And, him going to school and being told, well, I don't get it. How can you have two moms? Or this is confusing because my son's father, my wife and I have established what I truly believe to be a beautiful co-parenting relationship. We are all three very actively involved in raising our son. We show up to things together. My wife and my son's father actually coach his rep baseball team together. And I cheer on the sidelines. I stay out of it. I stay very out of it. But we have that. And even in that dynamic, people tend to question things a little bit or not totally understand. And the biggest advice I continue to give to myself is I don't need to worry that they don't understand. It's not it's not my business.
No. Yeah.
and B, that's a them thing. That's not a me thing. I'm very happy again of designing the life that we want and that works for my son and our family. We do it intentionally, we practice it often. We have really great boundaries with each other. And when other people question I don't get it, or, well, on Mother's Day, is he making two things or are we sharing a gift from school? We just roll with it because it's actually not an us thing.
Yeah.
It's a them thing.
Fair enough. That's a very healthy way to look at it. But it takes time to get to that place though, too, right?
Yeah, it absolutely takes time. And that's why I kept saying, like, looking at my triggers, because my son, I remember the first time he came home and said, so-and-so said I can't have two moms. So what is this? And he was in JK in a public school.
Yeah.
Not, so I'm even taking layers of things out of it. I was immediately inflamed and I felt my face go red. I felt my body reacted. And I'm sure the first thing I said, not having had full emotional control at that moment, was something not pleasant, right? Of, well, little Susie can ... and that's also, but that's again, going back to I'm modeling for him. And the last thing I want is him going to school and projecting onto someone else. What I actually needed to say to him at that time was, every family's different and this is your family, right? There are so many different ways to have a family, and then advocate. And then I went to the school and gave them a little heads up, like, hey, just so you know, this happened. And next thing you know, they're reading a book in class about all the different types of families that exist. So had I blown up, which is what my initial reaction probably was at the time, it wouldn't have resulted in any sort of learning and education for that class. And now And now we can really just like check those triggers when they happen. I've learned how to create that pause button for myself and talk through, why different people might think different things.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean it's right, but different family, different rules, different way they do things.
And those
Doesn't mean it's
exposures
wrong.
teach our kids, right?
Absolutely.
Hearing another child say something that you don't necessarily agree with gives you the opportunity to talk to your son about why you don't agree with it either, right? So they're learning opportunities all the way around.
Yeah. And again, there are so many different families, and it actually taught him very quickly how to be open and curious about other families, curious about different traditions, curious about, who lives where and how do you do it? And, meeting families that were mixed up like ours, where, the biological parents aren't necessarily living in the same household. Now he asks questions like, oh, so when do you see your dad? And oh, when do you see, they have these talking moments that probably wouldn't happen if we weren't open to talking in the home.
Right. Do you believe, and I recognize there's some bias associated with this, you've agreed to be a part of the show, so you must see some merit in it, but do you believe that if you were in the process of growing your family now, a show like this would be beneficial to you? And if so, what kinds of things would you want to see included in a show like this?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, my wife and I considered having like growing our family, and we went to, a fertility clinic, and we sat there through their presentation. They have the thinking of doing this presentation, and there was a whole bunch of people there. All of the language was husband, wife, man, woman. And the whole time we sat there thinking, this isn't for us. Like, we get that it is. And we approached it with an open mind, gave them the benefit of the doubt. But at the same time, it just didn't feel tailored. It didn't feel like we could ask some of those perceivably awkward questions of like, I don't get it. How does it work? Or, what should we be looking for? And those sorts of things. And that was actually feedback we gave to the clinic. We didn't end up moving forward for various reasons, but that was feedback we gave. Was it didn't feel like that was meant for us or people like us. So having a place where you can go and have those conversations, and even conversations like this one about what different boundaries might you need to be putting in place, how might you need to, what other conversations might you need to be having in the home, or what things may trigger you down the road, and how do you want to show up, is all really, really important. I think about even this week when we got the class announcement. So we're recording this in September. School's just gone back, and my wife got kicked out of the Google Classroom. It said, you've been removed as a guardian. And immediately she assumed it was because she was not, the legal mother.
Right.
That's immediately where her brain went. And I too had been kicked out because it was a new school year. We all got kicked out.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
We all got kicked out, and we all had to re-upload as we enter a new year.
Yeah.
But the initial reaction was heightened there. Sure. And so you look at those pieces and you think, what can I do to prepare myself for those little things that come along the way?
Yeah.
Again, and it's less of the like constant, like overreact, like she wanted to, and it really was actually quite simple.
Yeah.
It was just it was a restart
for
all of us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like there's so many things we could still touch on. Is there anything that we haven't yet covered that you were hoping that we would spend some time talking about today?
I mean, I think that for parents, just enter all of this with an open mind, right? And oftentimes we want others to open their minds.
Mm-hmm.
And we also have to show up that way too. And I think oftentimes the energy that we show up with attracts that energy. And I know that can sound a little woo-woo, but I truly believe that, that with good intention, you get all the good things that you want.
Absolutely.
So just keep doing those energy checks, check in, and, those gut checks as well of like, does this feel right? What do I need to change? I thought I would do things this way. How come I'm not doing it? What do I need to do to realign myself?
Mm-hmm.
And that's a constant thing you're going to continue to do before baby, during baby, post baby. Yeah. It's actually life lessons that I really wish so many of us had been taught when we were in our early 20s, maybe, and we wouldn't all be figuring it out when we're not going to say ages, but
when we're trying to also figure out how to be a parent, right?
And that's part of it. Is I wish I had some of these skills earlier on. I don't think I've messed him up too much, but for my own mind and for my own enjoyment of it, like it is not just a season to get through.
Mm-hmm.
We all deserve to enjoy the season of parenting, and being present and intentional about it is, in my mind, one of the ways that I think we can be most successful.
Fair enough. How can people who are watching today and listening today find you and reach out to you to connect? I assume Zoom is a platform you use to communicate with your clients, or in person. Tell us how.
Yeah, so I work with clients in a few different ways. I'm very active on Instagram. So I'm at Ashlee.Livingstone, and exactly how my name is spelt there. So there's always some great content that I share on Instagram, but also I love chatting with people either in person or Zoom. I think the convenience that Zoom and virtual has given all of us, and it allows me personally to be able to reach a wider audience and help people quicker. So I do a lot of consultations and coaching with families and individuals over Zoom. But and then my email, hopefully we can add it in here.
Sure can.
Awesome.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's been fantastic to have a chance to talk to you today and to have you tell us and remind us a little bit more about loving ourselves enough to establish boundaries.
Absolutely. And they're okay. I often say boundaries are not a dirty word.
Nope. No, they're not.
No. Thank you, Sam.
Take care. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you for joining me today on the Becoming Baby Ready podcast. If you have a story that you'd like to share, or you know someone who might, if you're a professional who works in the capacity of helping people start and grow their families, and you identify as being a part of the 2S LGBTQIA+ community yourself, then please don't hesitate to reach out. We always have room for more stories to share, and there's always more learning to do.